Walder. By Varvaspolvi. Hold the door! Again he heard it, like he had for most his life. When will it stop? It was cold in the cave. Cold, dark, damp. Walder held on to his thick, burly legs, swinging his brawny body to and fro in order to shake away the cold. Hold the door, he muttered. But where was the door? How could he hold a door that was not there? Hold the door. No one ever understood him. They all called him Hodor, a cruel jade meant with light-hearted kindness. That's what hurt the most, the kindness of it. None of them wished him ill, yet they hurt him all the same. For years he had cried himself to sleep. Eventually he numbed to the pain, took the name for his own, wore it like armor. Like the armor he should have worn but was taken from him. They all thought him a lackwit, but he comprehended more than any of them ever could. They hadn't seen it, the heart of winter. Brandon Stark stirred on the weirwood throne, the roots and branches slowly inching over his chest and legs. Dying, Walder knew. Death wouldn't take its toll for 100 years or more, and even the signs of it would not show for many decades. But Walder knew. He had seen it that day, Brand's death, and his own. It was coming. The whole place stank of it. Death. And the door. And the ones beyond. The ones they called the others, but were just more of the same. His eyes had long since adjusted to the dark, dark tunnels, but his heart had not. The smell of rotten leaves and frosty raven droppings hang in still, stale air. Walter wished he could tell them, not for the first time. The wizard had fooled Bran, yet still Walter had carried the lordling all the way here. He hadn't had to do that, but he didn't know. Not in the beginning. It wasn't until he was first taken in the tower by the lake that's when he realized the door was drawing close, and there was but little time. The icy storms and beds of snow that could swallow even a great big man like himself, like the marshlands of the crannogmen he carried as prince, all the while knowing what lay ahead. Why, he asked himself, although he didn't know the answer truly. It was no use. He would have taken him and gone north in any case, enslaving him and trapping him into a small corner of his own mind, better a mule than nothing at all to the very last.
"What's the matter, Hodor?"
Mira asked in a soft voice, her eyes deep with sadness. They had never found her brother Jojen in the depths beneath. Months must have passed since he got lost. But how many Walder could not say. One could never truly tell in the dark.
"Is it the cold?"
"Hodor," Walder said, never stopping his rocking back and forth. Mira took a couple of quick, nervous glances about them to make certain that no one was listening. The children or the ravens. Feudal, of course, the ravens were never far away, and it was so easy for them to find a place to hide in the dark, if they even needed one.
"I don't like this any more than you do,"
she finally said.
"We need to get Bran out of here."
Walder ceased his frenetic movings about to take a look at Mira, a look he thought was long and hard, but was most probably not perceived that way. No one ever perceived his meeting. "Hodor," he said thoughtfully. "We should never have come this way. It was no use now. How can you not see that?" "Hodor." Mira gave a long, exasperated sigh. Her breath steamed with cold, white flames in the cave, rising up and becoming one with the black moss that covered the ceiling.
Summer.
It was Bran's voice. He had opened his eyes. The dead wizard had his one red eye open too. The other was grotesquely pierced through by a twisted snake of a root, only one in the veritable infestation of slow, creeping death.
Bran,
Mira said, taking a step toward the lordling, then another, then stopping. Her foot had met with a barely living branch.
where were you? With Summer? Flying,
Bran said. His tired eyes peered distantly into nothing.
I was flying.
He is learning, the wizard said slowly in a barely audible voice, cracked by the many, many years of saying little and less. Fast he will take, much less time than we thought. His blood red eye gleamed.
Good.
Walder flinched. Leaf had crept up from the shadows, a fierce smile on her lips, her golden green eyes beaming in the dark.
There is not much time.
No, the wizard admitted, glancing at Walder and Mira with what Walder thought may have been sadness. Not for them.
What is that supposed to mean?
Mira said, her voice quivering.
Why is there not much time?
Oh, there is time, the wizard said. So very, very much time. But not for all. Hold the door. Tears had appeared in Mira's eyes.
But why? Eventually time will run out for all of us.
Leaf said not unkindly.
But not for the trees. The trees remember. But men have what little time they have in the sun, and when the sun goes down they will fear the dark and strive to take the sun away from others. Sun, for them, is something to be taken, when it ought to be something that is given. For all the world, the animals and the trees, and men.
Hodor, Walder muttered, shaken. It is coming. Mira's feet betrayed her, and now Walder could hear the tears in her voice.
But why? What is happening? What will happen to Bran?
You must go, the wizard announced in an agonizingly deliberate pace. Go and take him! He must be protected! He must go far away! Hold the door.
Far away.
Leaf echoed, as did the tunnels.
But where?
Mira asked. Walder knew where. He had known since they entered the cave. No, before that. Down, down into the tunnels. A raven flew in from the opening above and perched under the wizard's shoulder, pecking softly at his not quite empty eye socket, as if it was whispering something into it.
Down,
Bran said. He knows. Walter's heart sank. Now, the wizard said, they are coming, and I must slumber.
Quick,
Leaf explained, shaking Walder.
pick up the boy and go.
Walder only stared at the deep, empty darkness, although he knew he scarcely could believe it.
Do it,
Mira shouted, the tears in her voice giving way to hard determination. It was just like her to regain her resolve when there was a task to be done. Walder breathed in long and deep. Hodor! He went to his princeling, moved over some of the branches in disgust to get a better grip of him, and placed him on his back.
Hodor,
Bran said. That's not my name. You know it's not.
Thank you.
Hurriedly they went into the tunnels, passing by the many chambers in which the children were dreaming of everlasting green dreams. They went deeper and deeper as the murmur of the underground stream came closer and closer. In his haste, Walder almost stumbled into the crevice when it came upon them, but at the last moment he got a grip of a branch on the wall. He recoiled at the evil growth, but didn't let go. Mira helped him onto solid footing. Then they found the ladder. Down, down, down they went, a ladder, a stony platform, and another ladder. So it went, gods only knew for how long. No one spoke a word, not even Walder. It was warmer down here, but not as warm as all that. The cold, black water was sloshing with purpose, only into one direction, for now. Walder longed for the days in Winterfell, before it was burned, before the war. No, even before the war, before that, before he was taken, when his parents still lived and he was but a boy among many, dreaming of knighthood. Sir Willis, the master-at-arms, had given him much appraisal. He used to say that what Walder missed in speed, he made good for with his defensive technique and strength. He had been practicing swordplay in the yard that day. Mira hushed.
"What is that?"
Walder listened. There was something. Low, distant, up in the caves. It was almost like echoing drums. "Hodor," he said.
"We must cross the stream,"
came Bran's soft voice beside his ear.
"and head down the river."
Down, down, down the river.
"But how?"
Mira said.
"There's no crossing here. Even if the water was shallow enough, Hodor can't climb the crevasse with you on his back." "You'd be surprised if you knew what Hodor could do,"
Bran said. That took him by storm. Does he know? Then how? Why? "Hodor!" he cried excitably.
"Hodor,"
Bran agreed. The sounds, whether they were drums or not, made little matter. Slowly but steadily crept closer and more distinguishable. Walder could have sworn he heard faraway screams muddled into the rhythmic cacophony, but it was impossible to say. The loud roiling of the stream did its own part in muffling the sounds coming from the upper levels. But Walder did not need to know what the sounds were exactly to know it was nothing good. He could have been deaf and still known. Mira climbed down the naturally formed ridge, carefully setting her hands and feet into the small crevices in the rock. Once down, she took the frog spear and started prodding the water, trying to measure the depth of it. The spear wasn't long enough. She started walking downstream, prodding all the way, trying to find a shallow point. Walder followed along the crag, with Bran on his back. It had been spring, when all the time ahead of him was stolen from him. He had just rang Jory's helmet like a bell when the young Stark came to the yard.
"Jory? Walder?"
He had waved, stridden across the yard with long, determined legs. Brandon had taken a liking to them, as he did with anyone he could fight, highborn or not. He had that wild smile on his face, so unlike his father and brothers.
"Come along. I want to show you something."
That was the first time Walder had ever visited the crypts. They had made their way toward the first keep, taking a turn toward the lich yard, and then they had to push through some rampant thorny bushes, but they did manage. They found the door. Made of old, darkened ironwood, just like Brandon had said they would. It took all three of them to push the door open again. It was dark inside, and for a moment the opening seemed to hungrily suck in warm air from the outdoors. Brandon took a lantern from the folds of his thick fur cloak and some flint.
"Walder, hold the door for me, will you?" "Hodor!"
Walder snapped back from his reverie, and he was back on the subterranean riverbed. The sounds had crept closer yet. Now Walder could hear that they were no drums. It was steel hacking at wood. The ones who were coming were methodically cutting every root and branch, giving death its final due, he realized. He might have been relieved had he not known that they themselves numbered amongst the roots to be cut. The boy on his back was a terrible seed, not to be given the chance to take root and grow. But are they in time? Mira must have seen the sudden alertness on his face as she continued.
The stream is slower here, near the bend. I cannot reach the bottom, but if it's shallow, I'm sure you can. Could you come down here?
Hodor! He conceded and started to climb down, with the boy breathing warmly into his neck. Then there was a soft smack up the ridge. Walder had barely gone far enough down not to see over the edge and glimpse what it was. There was another smack. He decided he'd rather not find out and kept on climbing. Cold sweat trickled down his back, and when the boy pressed against it, the smacks came on coming, some softer than others. The very moment he lay his feet on the black, slimy rock, Mira gave a shriek. He looked up. There was whites on the ridge, blue lights flickering in their cold, dead eyes. The whites saw them, and the first dropped down the crag right beside Walder, its black, blind hands reaching at his ankles. "Hodor!" He screamed and without a thought plunged into the stream. Luckily his feet did find bottom, the water reaching up his back to Bran's waist. He reached his arm out to Mira. "Hodor!" Mira hopped onto his shoulders. She was not much heavier than Bran, but the weight of them both and the force of the current made every step a toil. The whites amassed on the strand. The first ones had entered the stream, but were instantly taken by the current and carried afar. Not enough meat on them. They cannot pass, he realized. Encouraged, he took a step, then another. The other side of the river beckoned, but it was not the only thing that called to him. When they had entered the crypts, they had been very careful stepping down the old stone steps, their edges hewn smooth by time. Even with Brandon's lantern, it was hard to see. A cold wind rose from below. Jory almost fell once, but Walder was able to grab the back of his coat, and he had regained his balance. They came to the first level where the father of Lord Rickard and his fathers rested, but Brandon ignored them. Down, down the tunnels they went. Nothing grew there, not even moss. After descending what felt like an hour or more, they had come to a collapsed wall of brick and mortar. Brandon put down his lantern and looked to Walder and Jory.
"Benjen came with me here another day,"
he said, excitement in his voice.
"He was able to crawl through. See the hole? It leads to the other side."
Walder did see the hole. Even for a small boy like Benjen, it must have been a tight fit.
"Yes,"
Jory had said.
"What of it?" "There is something there,"
Brandon said, the gloomy light of his lantern making the white of his grey eyes shine in tints of red and orange.
"Something I need to see."
He turned to Walder.
"I cannot move the bricks by myself, and I don't want father to know, but you, Walder, you are the giant's blood, they say. You can help me, can't you?"
"I'm not sure," he had said. "I suppose we can try."
"Hodor, where are you going?"
He had scarcely even realized that they had reached the other bank, climbed up the ridge, and were now running along the river downstream, swept away by his thoughts. Walder had almost entered a tunnel on their right. "Hodor!" he apologized, and ran to Mira's side. There were whites on the other side, so very many of them. Many of them had dropped face first into the stream, most of them gone into the black water, but some of them seemed to have managed to anchor onto a chance rock, jagging up from the bottom. "They're forming a bridge," he thought. Terrified, it wouldn't be long. "Hodor!" He hastened his strides. Moving the stones had been arduous work. The muscles in his arms and back had bulged over and over again. The other boys were panting, wet, and stinking with sweat. Despite the cold and breeze, they had taken off their surcoats and shirts. But finally the wall gave way, and there was an opening large enough for them to pass through. Brandon took the lantern and led the boys down the tunnel, sloping even further into the abyss of the earth. After a while, they saw it. The door with a face. Hodor! He whimpered, shaking his head. He didn't want to remember, but he knew he must. This was the time. It would happen again. He was running to his doom, carrying his murderer on his back.
Now right,
Bran said. They veered to the right, into yet another dark tunnel. Walder heard the approaching heavy, sluggish, but fast footsteps from behind them. They went along the corridor, not for a short while, but not too long either. Then it was there. The door. The ancient weirwood face greeted them with a terrible grimace, locked in place for eternity. Who goes there? The door said. Hodor! Walder answered. Back then, the door had put the same question to them.
Brandon Stark,
Brandon said.
the heir to Winterfell.
It was but all Walder and Jory could do to stare in astonishment. You may not pass, the door said, slowly in a monotonous tone that implied no interest in Brandon's heritage. The way is opened only to the brethren.
Brandon Stark,
Bran said.
the Green Seer.
The door's ancient, deeply carved red eyes, shedding tears of congealed sap, opened wide and stared at Bran. Yes, the winged wolf. Just so. You may pass. After Brandon had been denied entry, the door had glimpsed at the boys, its eyes locking onto Walder. It said, You must pass. Simultaneously, both in Walder's memory and the present, in the future and all currents of time, the hinges creaked and the great weirwood door ruptured open, making a loud, echoing explosion of noise as the old, time-hardened wood stuck heavily against the stone.
I'm sorry, Hodor.
Bran whispered into his ear.
You must know that.
No, please, no. You can't be dead. And then he was inside him once more, pushing away further and further, taking the reins of his mule. No! The tears welled in his eyes.
Don't be frightened.
He heard Bran's voice within him.
It will not take but little time.
His muscles cramped, his arms and legs were moving without his consent. It was wrong. He didn't want to. He saw the door coming closer and closer, faint light shimmering from the other side. Behind him, the whites were closing in. Not upon them quite yet, but soon. He gave what little struggle he could under the force of Bran's will, stronger than ever. The dead wizard was right, he realized. Bran had learned.
Easy now, Hodor.
His watery eyes became fire. My name is Walder! Hold the door! He fought. He thrashed about, he bit his tongue and smashed his head against the rocks. He gnawed the flesh on his chest.
What are you doing?
The dead boy said.
You cannot. You know you can't.
From the corner of his eye, he saw Mira staring with astonished horror, shouting something at him, but what he could not say, nor did he care to. Fuck you! He screamed, voiceless. He saw the whites. They had come around the corner, their pale blue eyes hungry. Walder reached his arms to his back as he ripped the withered small body of a boy off his neck and threw him at the whites. Mira gave a long, horrified shriek with her hands on her mouth. Walder was sorry for her, but she would die with him, to no fault of her own. As the whites tore and worried at the boy's flesh, and Bran's white pupils came back from behind his eyelids to give Walder a last accusing glance, he felt him disappear. Walder was free. But he had not much time for satisfaction. The whites were upon him. Hold the door! Hold the door! He screamed and squealed as the cold ones ripped his body open and his entrails hung loose before him. Mira was already but a bloody, mangled corpse, and soon she would wake. Walder knew, as he would, and then he woke, panting. First, he didn't quite know where he was. Frantically, he eyed his surroundings, trying to make sense of anything. Was he dying? What was happening? Then Neo remembered. "Well," he managed. "Yes," Morpheus said, with that familiar shit-eating grin on his face. "Nebuchadnezzar, the ship, a game." "It was so real," he said, his heart beating so fast and heavy he could hardly hear his own voice. "An interactive, for the most part, randomly generated open-world experience." Mouse had come up to him, smiling in satisfaction at Neo's horrified marvel. "I call it a video game. A sort of an upgrade, I would say, from Nintendos and PlayStations they have in the Matrix. There are thousands of characters that will change their comportment according to your interactions. Only 100 or so are available characters, ones I've given storylines." "You wrote that?" Despite his distraught terror, Neo couldn't help giving a nervous laughter. "You're a sick fucking bastard, Mouse, you know that?" "Thank you." Mouse turned around in his chair, tipped and tapped at the keyboard, glaring at the green letters of code. "Seems like you spent your lifetime as Hodor." He quickly turned around and gave Neo a knowing grin. "I'm proud of that one. Real fucked up life that sack of shit has." "I've never played as him," Morpheus interjected. "Would you recommend it?" "Yes!" "No!" Mouse and Neo said in unison. "Anyways," Mouse said, and bent forward towards him, smiling. "That Mira girl, though, what do you think of her? Tits like those." "Tits?" Neo didn't understand. "She was small and flat, like a boy." The smile was wiped away in an instant, and Mouse looked more disappointed than Neo had ever seen him. "I have to look at the code." "But wait," Neo said. "How does the time loop actually work, since it's kinda stopped it from happening by not giving in? It doesn't make any sense." Suddenly a tall lamp burst into the door, its shade glowing darkly in the well-lit room.
"And now that it's been mentioned, we will never have to speak of it again,"
it said, and promptly exited. "In any case," Morpheus said, serious now, "the time for fun and games is over. We've received new orders from Zion. The machines are to..." Then they were all hit by a train. The end.
So is this the sort of story that you like?